I hear a lot of things about Ayurveda that just kind of put it into a box. And it's so much bigger and grander and more meaningful, I think, than people really give it credit for.
We say it all the time that health and happiness are your birthright. That comes from Ayurveda, and the system gives us everything that we need to live a good life.
You can get up at 10 and eat an egg and still practice Ayurveda.
Ayurveda, on the surface, it does appear that it does use toxic medicines. I will not sugarcoat it.
Welcome to Herbalism Uncensored, the podcast where we dig deep into the world of herbalism and natural healing. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Lila. We're two clinical herbalists who recognize the need for honest and authentic conversations about the state of natural healing today. As practitioners, we feel called to have uncensored discussions about why people aren't finding relief and what to do about it.
If you're frustrated by lack of results, overwhelmed by conflicting advice online, disillusioned by the commercialization of wellness, or simply passionate about natural healing, you're in the right place.
This podcast is our way of cutting through the noise, busting myths, and challenging marketing gimmicks.
This is Herbalism Uncensored,
where together we're nurturing the future of natural healing.
The contents of this podcast are for informational purposes only and are not intended to be a substitute in any way for professional medical advice, treatment, or diagnosis. It's important that you always seek the advice of your physician or other licensed healthcare provider with any questions or concerns you may have regarding a medical condition.
Today, we have a very exciting episode planned. It is our Mythbusters #2 episode where we are talking about all the myths that we hear on Ayurveda. There is a lot of misconceptions about the system on the interweb today. So today we're going to bust some myths.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm really from the interweb. Did they say that? Is that a thing?
It's a thing in my head.
I love it. I hear a lot of things about Ayurveda that just kind of put it into a box. And it's so much bigger and grander and more meaningful, I think, than people really give it credit for. But before we get started, I just want to say thank you so much to all of our listeners. It's been really exciting for us this last month to see the number of downloads continue to increase and subscribers increase. And we really just want to thank you guys from the bottoms of our hearts, because this is definitely a passion project for Lila and I. And everybody who's listening is just validating that this is what we need to be doing. And also please continue to subscribe, because the more subscribers we have, then the better guests that we can get on. And we have some plans to have some pretty cool guests on in the near future.
Okay, so let's orient ourselves on what exactly Ayurveda is, because not everybody knows. So Ayurveda is the oldest continuously practiced medical system, fully fledged medical system on the face of planet Earth today. That means it's been practiced in a clinical setting nonstop for over 5,000 years, which I think is just so mind-boggling. Modern medicine is maybe 300 or 400 years old, so just to compare the two systems and how new and old they are is just, it blows my mind.
Yeah, and it is a complete medical system, right? It's not just food combining, it's not just massage, it includes surgery, it includes acupuncture, it includes many things that we don't think about as Ayurveda. We think of acupuncture as traditional Chinese medicine. We think of surgery that's something that's only done in Western medicine. But Ayurveda includes those things, includes bone setting. It can include anything that the human body could need has been taught and practiced in Ayurveda at some point in time, even though it may not be popularly done today in the US.
Yes, fully fledged medical system, which means it treats chronic diseases, and it also does something that our modern medical system doesn't do, which is to preserve the health of the healthy. So this medical system doesn't just look at, this is what disease you have, let's treat it. It looks at the whole person and gives you tools to live a healthy and happy life. We say it all the time that health and happiness are your birthright. That comes from Ayurveda, and the system gives us everything that we need to live a good life.
Absolutely. And it's not just the physical, right? It looks at the whole person and it addresses mind, body, and spirit. I love that our teacher says it's the science of a million persnickety details, because you could dissect your life into a million persnickety details and think about how everything affects everything. And we talk a lot about practicing awareness and saying that all disease comes from a lack of awareness. And that comes from Ayurveda as well. What am I doing? How am I feeling? How does that affect me? Because the goal is to live a long and happy life and to function at your fullest potential at the highest level for as long as possible.
Alicia and I are both practitioners, and we are clinical herbalists, and we are trained from a planetary perspective, which means we bring in the three biggest natural healing systems: Western herbalism, traditional Chinese medicine, and Ayurveda. And I will speak for myself and say that I lean most heavily on Ayurveda for my assessments, for my protocols and plans and strategies, and just the way that I look at people and figure out their patterns. It's the system I most closely identify with. It's such a complete and beautiful system that does so much. It's such a pillar of my practice.
Same. Yeah, I mean, I would be able to work with people without my understanding of Ayurveda. I mean, and traditional Chinese medicine is amazing. Don't get me wrong. And I leaned really heavily on that. Like when Lila and I met, we were in an internship together, and I was really digging into traditional Chinese medicine. But no, I feel very comfortable in the Ayurveda. And Ayurveda, in a lot of ways, it's like my home. It's where I come from. My introduction to Ayurveda came at a young age. I have a hard time recognizing that people don't know what Ayurveda is. Not that all people don't. I'm sure many people listening know what it is and have heard of it before. But when I'm just out in the world in general conversation, I say I'm an Ayurveda practitioner, and my husband will get on to me. He's like, you make people feel like they don't know stuff. You need to explain what an Ayurveda practitioner is. And because they look at me and they either don't say anything or they say, "Are you what?" Because they've literally never heard the word before. And that's mind blowing to me because I was introduced to it 22 years ago. I remember being at the Guru Ramdas ashram in Houston, Texas, where I would go and do yoga and chant with these really nice Sikh ladies who were helping me with my mobility. And after class, we would hang out and we would drink golden milk. Or sometimes there'd be an event for Mother's Day, and I'd go and I'd bring my mom, and we would all eat khichdi. So I had this gradual, slow introduction from the women who had lived this lifestyle. They lived in a Sikh community. They lived an Ayurvedic lifestyle. They ate an Ayurvedic diet, and they were incorporating these things into their lives. That the more time I spent with them, they continued to introduce me to these different concepts, so that when I started studying herbalism, of course, I was thrilled to find a mentor who practiced Ayurvedic herbalism.
Well, I have a completely different introduction to it on my side. It's not something I grew up with. And it's almost, again, mind blowing to me how I'd never heard of the system because, like we've mentioned, it is the oldest, most continuously practiced system on the face of the earth today, as far as medical systems go. But it is the mother of all healing systems. So, as we talked about traditional Chinese medicine, it's actually a very similar system to Ayurveda. They're about 95% overlapping. Traditional Chinese medicine is based on Ayurveda in a ways any living medical system on earth today has some roots in Ayurveda. So it's funny that most of us haven't heard of it or have gone most of our lives without hearing about it. And it's having a resurgence right now. It's definitely serving millions, if not over a billion people on the face of earth today. It's still widely used in India and other places of the country. But I'll tell you, I had never heard of Ayurveda. And, I grew up with natural healing and herbalism and things like that. And I remember, I'm going to out myself right now because I spoke to a medium one time, which is like so not in the realm of things I do, but my sister convinced me and I did. And on the call, out of all the things said, she's like, this word keeps coming up for me, or they keep telling me to tell you the word Ayurveda. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. And she's like, well, just go look into it. And to be honest, talking to the medium freaked me out. And so I Googled Ayurveda and I was like, okay, you have to eat some strict diet for your body type. And they use toxic medicine. It sounds witchy. I'm putting it out of my head. Like, I'm going to avoid this like the plague because it's freaking me out. I want nothing to do with it. And so I go start living my life and start exploring. And I, realize I want to start studying herbalism and nutrition a little more seriously. And the first herb class I took, of course, that's where I found my mentor. And of course, he's like, this very immersed Ayurvedic master. I don't know what to call him that'll do him justice. He's an Ayurvedic doctor, and I know he was one of the first people credentialed in both herbalism and Ayurveda many, many moons ago. And so as I start learning herbalism, Ayurveda's there and I can't avoid it because I'm here. And I start gravitating for myself towards the Ayurvedic herbs and the yoga and all the Sanskrit, and all of a sudden it's a huge part of my life and what I do and how I live my daily life, but also how I work with clients. It's not creepy, I swear.
It's all about staying in balance and being aware of what affects what. And so, of course, like, diet's going to be a part of it, and massage is going to be a part of it, and your individual constitution is going to be a part of it. But these are all just parts of it. And like I said, that's what I see, is people narrowing it down and just looking at one aspect of it in a way that just doesn't do it justice. It just takes away from the possible benefits, because the way that it can benefit your life and your contributions to society is profound when you look at all of it. Even when you just look at one part of it, it can still be profound, but there's so much more.
Well, and I think that's what we really hope to do with this episode is demystify the system and cover some common misconceptions that people have out there in the world. And I'll say it's a pretty intimidating system. Like, it's very foreign. There's a lot of Sanskrit. It's hard to understand. There's not low barriers to entry. And if you only come from a Western medical lens, it almost sounds woo-woo. And it's not. It's actually very grounded in science, just a different type of science. Ayurveda literally stands for the science of life. So it's a system that teaches us how to live our life well, and part of that is managing diseases. Part of it's staying healthy. Part of it's staying happy. And once you can kind of demystify and make the system more accessible, it's really beautiful. And I hope that people have some nice takeaways from this episode.
Awesome. Yeah. Well said. So, shall we start?
Let's get into it.
Myth number 1. It's just a diet or lifestyle trend. Like I said, diet is part of Ayurveda, but it's not all it is. We do need to consider what we are eating, what we are putting into our body. What time of day are we eating? Because that's eating your largest meal at the hottest part of the day when your digestive fires are going to be roaring more so than they would be at other parts of the day, so that you're able to digest your food and assimilate it and pull the nutrients from it and turn it into something that can be useful to your body and have less waste, is part of Ayurveda. But it's not just a set of food rules.
I look at it like this. When we only look at the system as a diet and lifestyle practice, it makes it appear softer than it is. And we might think of it for losing weight or just, the healthy, happy living people want, but we're not going to think of it for serious disease treatment, which it's really effective at. So when we boil down the whole system just to diet and lifestyle, we're doing a disservice. And while those things are absolutely part of it, as Alicia mentioned, it's a system of thousands of persnickety details, and it'll give you details on how to live every aspect of your life. For most people, that's not the entry point, and that is not what is needed at the moment to get them living well, right? We might be bringing in herbs to treat symptoms. We might be bringing in other tools to help people feel good, and then easing them into this is how you live your life, but it can do everything in between. There's so many layers to it, from any entry point to whatever you're dealing with. Like, there is a layer to Ayurveda to help address that, but it addresses so much more than just, again, the diet and lifestyle. All that to say that Ayurveda, it's not just a wellness fad or a set of food rules, which we'll touch on a little bit more later, but it's a medical system. It's a fully fledged medical system. I think that's what people need to understand about Ayurveda.
Yeah, it's not just food.
Not just food.
What about it's just expensive self-care? Spa treatments, hair oils, luxury rituals, Dada, where you go and you lay on the table and they drip warm oil on your forehead. I've always wanted to go and try it, but I just can't bring myself to pay what they're charging for the Shirodara treatment, which is it is an Ayurvedic treatment, but again, just one part.
As we've mentioned, there's so many layers to the system, and what's gaining popularity here in the US is the expensive face creams and hair oils and kind of luxury spa services. And it makes Ayurvedic look inaccessible to people. When you go to the health food store and you see Ayurvedic products, that's what you're seeing. When you go to the spa, I know a spa I go to, they do the Shirodara treatments. And yeah, it's a very expensive luxury treatment. And Ayurveda wasn't meant to be inaccessible, but that's what's taken or gotten traction here for whatever reason. But it's more than that.
Yeah. Well, and I think maybe part of that is that we need that here. Like our lifestyle is so hard and so fast that we need to go and like lay on a bed and have somebody drip oil on our heads. It might be worth the luxury payments for someone who lives a really fast-paced Western lifestyle. But it leaves out the idea, the personalization and individualization of all Ayurvedic treatments, because that's not a treatment that would be recommended for everyone. It's very specific for specific constitutions, specific body balances. If somebody has a kapha constitution and kapha excess, then we don't really want to drip a bunch of oil on their head. And it's a very subtle, these are subtle therapies. And in my experience, when I care for my body using Ayurvedic principles, it's actually probably like the least expensive way for me to care for my skin and care for my hair.
Well, you bring up a really good point. And I agree. Like spa treatments are great. These products are nice. They smell good. They feel good. All the things. But when people turn to Ayurvedic treatments, and this might be where my opinion gets unpopular. When people turn to Ayurvedic treatments and they hear that, oh, there's this Ayurvedic massage, it's supposed to treat migraines, it's supposed to treat insomnia, and they go do it one time because that's how it's positioned. You go and do this massage or this spa treatment one time, and you expect these results, or you expect it to affect the things you're dealing with, and it doesn't. It makes Ayurveda look ineffective. So in the full system, if we were going to use something like Shirodara to treat migraines, to treat insomnia, to treat excess vata in the head, one, it would be one part of the therapy. There would be herbs, there would be nutrition, there'd be lifestyle, there'd be a bunch of other stuff going on. But two, it's something that would be done every day for like 3 months before even assessing effectiveness. It's one little thing going in the right direction. It's not the main treatment. So I think that's another kind of piece of the puzzle when the spa things are getting popular and we're looking at what the spa things are supposed to be doing and then they're not doing it. People look at the system as ineffective, which is my biggest fear because the system is so effective. It is so freaking great when used correctly.
Well, like you said, these luxury rituals, like we talk about Abhyanga almost, I think every episode we talk about Abhyanga, and I love Abhyanga. And I think Abhyanga is kind of a luxury ritual. It's my self-care, self-love. I'm in the shower, I'm massaging myself, I'm oiling myself up, I'm moisturizing, I'm nourishing. And I probably didn't start to feel different from doing it until I had been doing it for weeks. And the longer I do it, the better I feel. But it's not something that you just do once. And you talk about the Shirodara as part of a treatment, for example, for something like migraines or insomnia. And yeah, there would be herbs, there would be nutritional changes, there would probably be certain exercises or meditations, and then thought life. We talk about sadvrita, right living is part of Ayurveda. Paying your debts. How do you treat people? That's even more important than our interactions with other people are more important than what we put in our bodies as far as food and herbs go. And that might be a treatment that you get for 3 months, and you might even do it more than once a day. It's just one part of a great whole, a cog in the wheel.
Yes. And so when we see things extracted from the entire system that can't stand on their own, I think it's just important to talk about it and to make people educated on how these things are supposed to fit together, what they're actually capable of doing, right? I would never say go do this one treatment and it's going to fix your migraines because that's unrealistic. And we just need to make sure people understand because it is a new system and it is foreign and there is a lot of, how do I want to say that? Confusion on what it can and can't do and how these things should work. And so in talking about it, I think is really important.
Yeah, and just I want to be clear. If you love getting your Shirodara treatment once a month, and that's something that you just really enjoy, like keep doing it. Don't not do it. But I think what Lila's saying is if you're doing it because you have bad migraines and you're wondering why it's not taking care of your migraines, it's that whole we did what was like our third episode way back on why your treatments aren't working. It's not the right kind, not enough of it, the wrong amount or the wrong period of time. So you would need more, and you need to do it for longer to get the results.
Okay, number 3, VPK. Tell us about VPK, Alicia.
Oh, well, it's all about Vata Pitta Kapha. If you look up Ayurveda, that's what if you Google it, that's what you're going to find. You're going to find several articles about Vata Pitta Kapha, balancing Vata Pitta Kapha, quizzes on what's your Ayurvedic constitution. And, it's what is it? I'm Vata. What should I eat? Right? I'm a Vata person, so I have to go to bed at this time. And the truth is that the doshas are foundational, but they're not the whole story. And we have to consider that, like, the dosha, that's not what I am. It is good to know my constitution. And we have prakriti and vakriti. And the way that prakriti is the word for constitution. And the way that I remember that is that prakriti, it's like the plan for my life, right? If I know what my prakriti is, I know what my constitution is, then I can plan for how I'm going to live so that I can maintain balance or live as close to the zone of dynamic balance as possible. But then I have my vakriti, and my vakriti varies. That would be my current balance. And while my prakriti can influence what my current balance is right now today, my current balance is what I need to address right now today. So, like, I have a lot of pitta in my constitution. I would say I've got like a vata pitta prakriti. We're still, I don't know, the jury's still out. But if I get to a place where I have a kapha vakriti, where I have kapha excess, even though I have a lot of pitta in my constitution and it's good for me to avoid the heat, I might want to like start eating some warming foods and warm things up. So it's just it's an oversimplification to break it all down to I'm to Vata Pitta Kapha and what is my constitution, and I just need to know that to know how I can live. I have to think about where I'm at right now. What season am I living in? What climate am I in? And there's a whole lot more than just Vata Pitta Kapha that we consider as practitioners. There's Dhatus, Malas, Agni. We don't need to get into what all of these things are. I think the gunas are going to be the most important, the qualities. Are you hot or cold? Are you heavy or light? Are you wet or dry? Which are all part of Vata Pitta Kapha. But it's just not the whole story.
You touched on a couple things I want to kind of reiterate. And the first thing is we were taught you learn VPK, Vata Pitta Kapha, and then you forget it because there's so much more to everything than just the dosha system. But I think what most people experience is they got to figure out their dosha. And then they learn that they're vata, they're pitta, they're pitta kapha, whatever they are, and that's how they think they need to live their life. And what Alicia touched on is it's not about the constitution, it's about your current imbalance. And what's really interesting is Alicia and I have been doing this a while, and we're still uncovering our constitutions because most people are out of balance. They are far from their constitution, which is your blueprint, which is unchangeable. But years of living the modern American lifestyle, of living in society and all the things put us out of balance. And it can take a really long time to come back into balance and learn your true constitution. So when you're out there taking these tests or thinking that you need to do this diet because you think you're this constitution, we have to go past that and say, what are we feeling today? What is our current imbalance today? And address that. And that's really nuanced and it's really complicated. You can't package it all in a little mini quiz online. And so people kind of gloss over this really big concept for the ease of explaining the system, but there's a lot of nuance that's really getting lost that impacts how the entire system works.
Well, and that's you. I want to reiterate what you said is that because this is really important. When I first started looking into what is my constitution and taking all of the quizzes, the answer that I got every time was like high vata. I was scoring high vata. And the truth was that was my current doshic balance. I was anxious, I was insomniac, I was flighty, I was in a really creative period of my life, and I had excess vata. I was not scoring as high pitta. And yeah, I've definitely got a lot of pitta in me. I was just so out of balance. And that's something that I see as a practitioner, that when people come to me and they're not well, and nobody comes, I very rarely get to see somebody who just has a cold. Like people are majorly out of balance by the time they come and are willing and open-minded enough to be like, okay, I'm going to go see one of these people like Alicia or Lila. And they're so far out of balance, I can't tell what their constitution is. But it becomes clear as they get healthier and come more into the zone of dynamic balance. I think we had somebody I've been working with for about a year, and a year ago had no idea what his constitution is. I'm looking at him now and I'm like, oh yeah, he's like such a pitta. It's becoming more and more obvious, but he's feeling a lot better.
Yeah, and for most cases that you and I work on, the constitution does not matter. It's not important. It's not what we have to focus on. It's the imbalance. So all that to say that the system is really complex. It goes far beyond these patterns and it goes into these doshas, sub-doshas, different organ systems, different ways of looking at the entire body, different assessment techniques. There's a lot more to it than just the VPK. And also the way that we interpret VPK is gotten a little misconstrued. So setting the record straight on that one, I think, is super helpful to know that we worry about our current imbalance, not our constitution for most people at this point in their journeys.
Yeah, it's because the system's always changing. You might have one balance today and be in a different balance tomorrow. No one is ever perfectly in balance. That's a unicorn where it's always changing, moment to moment.
Yes. Okay, next myth is that you have to follow an ultra strict diet. And if you see people talking about Ayurveda, they'll tell you things like, you can't do these, you can't combine these foods. Don't ever eat fruit with other foods, or you have to eat in these really strict time constraints, or you have to eat really specifically for your diet. And these rules are strict, Alicia. Like, I don't follow all these rules. They're strict.
I mean, if you lived like an aesthetic lifestyle in a monastery, then you could follow these rules. I don't think it's really possible to follow all of these rules living in modern society. And the rules change for different people. The food combinations now, and this is what I was taught, and I think we were kind of taught like outside of the box and outside of the rigidity. And also, I think it's important here to touch on the difference in communication styles between Western, and Eastern cultures. If you listen to Indian teachers, whether they are, which I have listened to many, whether they are Ayurvedic teachers or yoga teachers or some kind of a guru or spiritual teacher, a nyasan, they are very definitive in their speech. I remember one spiritual teacher that I followed for a long time, and he would say, this yoga pose is a yoga pose you should do every day. And then the very next day, it'd be you should do this meditation every day. This meditation cures all disease. This yoga pose will cure all disease if you do it every day. The emphasis on you must do this. You must do this every day. What's the word for it? These absolutes. There was a lot of absolute speech that you absolutely must do this and you must do it every day and you should never do this or never do that. But I don't know if anyone's ever been to an Indian wedding. If it says 7:00 on, it says show up at 7:00. And if you show up at 7:00, you will be the only one there. The bride will arrive around 9. The emphasis and the absoluteness in speech isn't meant to be taken literally. And I think that here in our culture, with our European heritage, we take these things more literally. So when you say things like, you can never combine fruit with anything else. Well, if you're sick and you're trying to get well, you should not probably combine fruit with other things. But if you are strong and healthy and you have strong Agni, a strong, balanced digestive fire, then you probably will be okay if you eat fruit with nuts.
Well, I think when we boil it down to these really strict rules, and just for everybody's awareness, like there's a lot of really strict rules that people talk about and kind of see as like this is Ayurveda. You have to eat this way. You have to do things this way. When we attach to that rigidity, we are putting it in a box and we are bypassing the individual. And at the end of the day, the system, above all, cares about who these rules are being applied to. So the overarching rule in Ayurveda is if you can digest it, you can eat it. Now, these rules are helpful. They're shortcuts for addressing issues. They are ways that we know, for the most part, on the whole, these things, if they're done this way, this is what happens. But everybody is so unique that their individuality comes into play. And so this never drink an iced beverage gets morphed when you actually look at who is the individual and maybe their digestion is strong enough to drink an iced beverage. So we have to just get away from the really, really, really strict rules and realize that the system, above all, is about individuality and making it work for you, which is so cool because I'm drinking an iced beverage right now.
Well, and like, what's the temperature where you are?
Like 106 degrees.
Yeah. And I can see, like, even though your video is pixelated to me, I can see your pink cheeks. So, like, probably good to cool down a little bit. So, yeah, I think that food rules are suggestions, and they're suggestions that should take into consideration your current balance and your current health and your strength, your body's strength, and the strength of your Agni, your digestive fire, your ability to take what you're putting into your body and extract the nutrients and turn them into healthy tissues or healthy building blocks of tissues. If you're able to do that and you're able to do that well, you can bend and break some of those rules.
And I know we bend and break the rules, right? I mean, we try to bend them, try not to break them all and, just throw it out with just go crazy. But
well, that's the whole thing. So I'm going to talk about my grapefruit. I went to did a workshop that was filled with a bunch of naturopaths and nutritionists. And I introduced myself as an Ayurvedic herbalist on the first day of this weekend workshop. And we had lunch, and I have a lot of things that I don't eat. I don't eat corn. I don't eat soy. I don't eat gluten. It's a long list. So I checked out what they were serving for lunch, and I could only eat one of the items that they were serving in this like little 3-course meal. So I was still hungry, and I had a grapefruit. I had a grapefruit and a banana in my purse. I carry around things like grapefruits and bananas and almonds, if I'm going somewhere and I'm going to be gone for a while, because I know I might not be able to eat everything that they're serving and I might still be hungry. And I don't want to suppress my urges. And I don't want to walk around hungry. So I will feed myself. I will nourish myself. And I ate and then I ate the little bit that I could eat. I was still hungry afterwards. I ate my grapefruit, and I was accosted at this workshop because I thought that one of the nutritionists there had studied some Ayurveda. And she said, I thought that you practiced Ayurveda and you're not supposed to eat fruit after your meal. And but if I have to make a decision, I have a strong digestive fire. I have like an iron stomach. I seem to be able to digest just about anything, and except chicken. But the listeners don't need to know that. But I can digest most things, and eating an orange after I have a salad isn't going to bother me. And I know that because I know myself. But what is going to bother me is going through the rest of the remaining 4 hours of this workshop without having eaten, with my stomach growling. So I make a decision. But that's what I want to say is there are no Ayurveda police. And if you bend or break some food combining rules, the Ayurveda police are not going to come and arrest you and throw you into Ayurveda jail.
Yeah, it's not as rigid as I think it's depicted. And at the end of the day, it has to work for you, and you are an individual. There's nobody else like you on the planet. You have different tolerances, you have different digestive capabilities. So keeping that in mind as we do hear the rules is ultra important. Okay, our next one, which I'm excited about, is Ayurveda does not treat symptoms. So there is some talk around town that this system is only designed to do root cause healing, meaning if you have an issue that we won't treat the symptoms, you only treat the cause of the symptoms. So what that means in terms for how people experience care is when you don't treat symptoms, that means you're not bringing in any temporary relief. You're doing the things to heal the underlying issue, which usually takes more time. You don't see results as quickly. And a lot of people think that's the only righteous way to do Ayurvedic medicine.
But we are supposed to relieve the suffering of the sick. That's
Exactly.
that's one of the creeds in Ayurvedic medicine. And we can treat the root causes. We can palliate symptoms. We can do those things in either order. We can do them at the same time. It's really just up to the person and how many changes they want to make and how quickly they want to make the changes, and how many capsules and herbs they want to swallow. All of these things can happen in any order or at once, because there are 6 stages of disease, and we can treat any stage at any time or treat multiple stages at once. And what is it, like the first 3 stages, there's no symptoms.
Well, I think you have a pretty similar approach to working with clients as I do, but my goal is to help them get relief quickly so they have the space to do the deeper healing work. Because doing the things, taking the herbs, taking the supplements, changing your lifestyle, changing your diet is hard when you don't feel good. And if it
Mhm.
takes a long time to see the results of the work you're doing, people aren't going to stick with it. So in my head, and this is how I've been trained, and I know this is how you've been trained, is let's make people feel good. Let's give them the space so they can do the deeper healing, because that deeper healing work is not easy and it's not quick.
No, it's not. Well, and I remember when I was sick, like my big major symptom that I had was the racing heartbeat. Where out of nowhere, I had tachycardia, which is super fast heartbeat, and my heart would start beating 160 beats per minute out of nowhere. And I wanted that to stop. They couldn't find anything wrong with my heart. So I'm really glad that I went to a practitioner who was willing to treat that symptom, because we were able to take care of that within like a couple of weeks. I was no longer having that problem. If it was increasing, it was only increasing to like 120. And over the course of a couple of months, it went away and hasn't come back. And I had the ability to work on those other things, because that's scary. It was really scary. And we could have treated the root cause, and it would have taken longer, and I probably wouldn't have been able to follow through with it. I was afraid I was going to die. When your heart goes up to 160 beats per minute, you're afraid you're going to die. That's just all there is to it. Unless you're like on a bicycle. So next, it uses dangerous or toxic medicines.
Our bosmas. This might be actually my favorite part of Ayurveda. So Ayurveda, on the surface, it does appear that it does use toxic medicines. I will not sugarcoat it. Things like mercury, what else? Those are two big ones that are coming to mind. Lead. Yes. Ayurveda has a form of medicine called bosmas, where they figured out thousands of years ago these alchemical processes to make these metals no longer toxic to the body. And so they do use these medicines, but they prepare them in a way that they are no longer toxic to the body. I've taken these medicines, I've taken mercury. It makes me feel amazing. But to most people, that's really scary. That sounds like a really freaky thing. But when you understand that we have intelligently found a way to manipulate these metals in a way that our body accepts them differently, and they do good, and they are medicine to be used with the correct supervision, short term, all the things, it's pretty cool and amazing, but a pretty intimidating concept.
Well, and just to be clear, we're talking about, like you say, these manipulate these metals, or you've taken mercury, and you've taken mercury that has been put into a kiln and cooked at such a high temperature that it turns to ash, and then mixed with, there's all these, it's this very intricate process. Talk about the science of a million persnickety details. It's mixed with milk, or some kind of a juiced leafy herb, or cow urine, and then put back in the kiln again, and turned to ash again, and then taken back out. And they might do this incineration process 10 times or 20 times or 30 times over the course of days or weeks, and cook it at such a high temperature that the metals are oftentimes subliming. It's a sublimation process. That's where they're cooked at such a high temperature that it goes directly from a solid to a gas. And so this is, by the time it comes out of there, it's not mercury anymore. But that's, what's listed on the ingredients. And these things are, it's scary when you talk about, I'm taking this remedy that has arsenic in it or has lead in it. Or right now I just finished a 4-week round of a busma that didn't have any toxic metals in it, but had a lot of heavy metals. It was like pearl, and it was pearl and coral and a couple of other things. And now I'm taking another medicine that actually isn't a basma, but has Indian aconite in it. And Chinese aconite is the most toxic substance on earth, but this is a different aconite that's not as toxic, and it's at such a complete, like totally low dose. I feel great. And it's a really cooling formula that's great for a pitta person like me who lives in a really hot climate like I do.
Yeah, I think the real thing to take away here is that yes, these things are used, but they're used with a lot more nuance than is discussed. And I will also caveat that it is a very small portion of the materia medica in Ayurveda. Like these aren't things. I mean, everyone practices differently. Most people who practice in America, I would have to say, shy away from using these things. They're not necessarily like the frontline treatments or the things that everybody's using. Like there's so many tools in the toolbox. I know I mostly work with herbs. I think Alicia mostly works with herbs. I'll use bosmas on myself and with certain clients, but it's definitely like you can practice the entire system of Ayurveda and never touch a mineral medicine, or only touch the non-toxic mineral medicines. Like you mentioned conch shell, that's calcium. You mentioned pearl, gold, tin, all these things that are non-toxic and can be used safely. So if these things still intimidate you or you don't feel comfortable with, it's something you can be very immersed in the system. You can use it to treat whatever you have, but never touch these things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, still, even with these non-toxic things like the pearl and then, the conch shell, they still go through this multi-step, very detailed incineration process. It's called the science of Rasa Shastra. If anybody wants to look it up and geek out on it, I find it to be absolutely fascinating. And there are times where it's really good. I don't worry about the toxicity of things at all because I go to good sources. I think it's about knowing who you're working with and having trusted sources. And I think it's really interesting that that's what you found when you first looked up Ayurveda, because I actually got my introduction to Ayurveda, so like 22 years ago. And I learned about Rasa Shastra about 5 years ago. So, just to validate your point that it's not a frontline medicine, and it's one of those, it's a small part of the great whole.
Next one, Alicia, I'm gonna pass this one off to you because I think you're excited for it. Is tell me about garlic because I hear it's a no. No garlic.
The garlic thing. Okay, so garlic, I'll tell you what Ayurveda says. Garlic is hot. Garlic is rajasic, which means that it can get you moving, and it can also like stimulate sexual energy. So it's not recommended to give garlic to children. But there's this new thing that I've just like word on the streets is that Ayurveda says no garlic. And that's not true. The no garlic is really a religious or spiritual matter. That there are some people in certain religions who have chosen not to eat garlic because it stimulates rajas. And so you have three energies in your mind: sattva, rajas, and tamas. And if you're trying to live a very spiritual lifestyle, you want to keep your mind sattvic. And so you only want to eat things and do things that will encourage that sattvic energy. So you don't want to encourage rajasic or tamasic energy. And garlic encourages rajasic energy. So they choose to avoid things like garlic and onions. There's an Iskad temple by my house where I love to go and chant Hare Krishna in the morning times. And they have a little restaurant, and they don't serve any garlic or any onions in any of their dishes. There's no garlic or onions anywhere in the building, but it's Indian food. And that's not because not eating garlic is Ayurveda. It's because not eating garlic is part of their religion. It's part of their spiritual practice. I don't know exactly how that has become conflated with Ayurveda, because we use garlic all the time, like garlic and milk. That's a good nighttime. That's an Ayurvedic evening beverage.
I think it became conflated because Ayurveda comes from India, and while it's this whole system that kind of stands on its own, there's a lot of different lineages to it. It's practiced a lot of different ways, and sometimes it kind of blends into the spiritual or religious aspects of India, and these things kind of get merged together. And I think that's where it's coming from, is that. And another like common thing that I think also happens is people think it's a vegetarian system because Hindus are vegetarian and it's widely practiced by that community. And so then these things get a little gray, and people stop differentiating between this is Ayurvedic and this is religious or spiritual.
Well, and there we go, because back to like the food combining stuff, because meat's not often recommended, but some people need to eat meat. If you look at Ayurveda, somebody who's got really high vata, has a vata constitution and high vata imbalance, might need the grounding and nourishing meat. And this is all kind of leading into one of our other myths, which was that it's just for spiritual people. Because I want to be clear that Ayurveda is not a religious system. It is for all humans. You don't have to follow a particular faith or a particular cultural practice to benefit. You don't have to believe in any kind of deity or not believe in any kind of deity in order to practice Ayurveda. It's about your life, man. Ayurveda is about what are you doing.
Yeah,
Sorry, Is that oversimplifying? What are you doing? Are you meditating? What time are you getting up in the morning? What time are you going to bed? What are you eating? How do you treat your neighbor?
I, I'm gonna say it might be oversimplifying because I still think there's layers to it, and I think that not everybody's ready for the nitty gritty rules or to look at it in like everything's connected, right? Everything we do, the interaction we have with our neighbor, the relationships we have, the household we live in, the jobs we have, like we know it's all connected. But I think there's an entry point in for everybody, no matter where they are on their journey. I think that's what's so cool about the system is it's so dynamic. And maybe somebody's not ready to look at their lifestyle, but we can still help them palliate symptoms, right? Or
Yeah.
maybe somebody's not willing to go all in, or they're not to the point where they realize, like, hey, I have this awareness and I realize that my actions are causing this outcome. Like, not everybody is there. And the system really does meet you wherever you are on your journey. And it doesn't do it in a way that's preachy or that expects you to go a certain path or do it like to me it's like it's such an individualistic system that really can pace to where you're at and give you tools to where you're at and what you're ready for, which I think is really 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 cool.
Yeah, absolutely. When I say it's about what are you doing, I mean, it's about like taking a look at what you're doing, being aware of how it feels and adjusting accordingly. And, you know, we can all start anywhere. Absolutely. You don't have to get up at 4:30 in the morning and go to your sangha with a group of spiritual people and chant for 2.5 hours every morning and then eat a vegetarian breakfast with no onions or garlic to practice Ayurveda. You can get up at 10 and eat an egg and still practice Ayurveda.
The system is fluid. It's a set of guidelines that apply to every individual differently. And at the end of the day, the goal is, are you happy? Are you healthy? Are you able to do the things in your life that you want to do? Or are you being held back by something in your health and happiness? And at the end of the day, like it's not about following the rules. It's about how you feel and what you're able to do in the world. Like yoga. Yoga is not about being able to hold a certain pose. It's not about being able to do pigeon perfectly. It's about how you interact with the world. And so making sure that we don't conflate the two things I think is really important because at the end of the day like the goal is are you living a good life regardless of are you food combining or not? Are you following these strict rules? Cuz there's so many different paths everyone can take that the individual matters.
Absolutely. That's another one. We didn't write this down, but it's like the idea that Ayurveda is just the food and lifestyle aspect of yoga.
Yeah, we didn't talk on that. And for context, yoga and Ayurveda are two sides of the same coins, right? They're sister systems, like we call it. And Ayurveda is the medical system side that's goal is to keep you healthy and happy so you can do your spiritual work. But that is not a you have to be spiritual, you have to be on a certain path to use it. That's just its goal is to keep you healthy and happy for as long as possible so you're able to learn and grow in this lifetime. Where yoga is a spiritual system.
Yeah. Well, and they were born out of two different systems. And so I want to say that you can practice Ayurveda without doing yoga. And you can do yoga without practicing Ayurveda. But they do go together so nicely.
I was like, they're a gateway. It's a gateway drug, though. You start yoga, you're gonna want to Ayurveda. If you start Ayurveda, you want to yoga. I just really want to reiterate, like, this system is meant to be accessible. Like, it is meant to be used by everyone, no matter where they're at, no matter what they believe. A really cool, really profound system that at the end of the day really cares about you and that you feel good.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah. Everyone could incorporate these concepts and benefit from them. So I think we got down that it's not complementary. It's not alternative medicine. It's not a side dish.
It's not, but I will also say that it doesn't alienate or exclude modern medicine. Ayurveda is kind of an if it works system, and it will evolve and consider new concepts. In my opinion, if you're practicing true Ayurveda, it doesn't see anything as necessarily good or bad. It's all about the context of the individual. So it's not necessarily against medication in certain scenarios. And I think we all very much agree that we have a medical system that's much better at Ayurveda for treating acute and emergency situations. And I think that's important to know that it doesn't have to be at odds with modern medicine, and the two can coexist in a really beautiful and cool way.
Oh yeah. I mean, we could be integrative.
Integrative. I love that.
Yeah. What about it's not scientific or evidence-based?
That's a good one. And I'm going to ask people to, like, for a second, to suspend what they think they know about science. Because we have a very, what is up too much? We have a very rigid set of, this is scientific, this is how it needs to be done. It needs to be a double-blind, placebo-backed study to count for anything. Ayurveda, again, the science of life, is a scientific system, and everything that it does or tells you to do or has a rule about, it's been studied, it's been observed, it's been practiced, it's been tried for thousands of years and fine-tuned and perfected, and it has a very in-depth view of the human body, but it's different than our current view. And so I will argue that it's very scientific, but maybe not in a way that people quite understand or can accept at this point.
Well, I mean, I think there's clinical observation, right? And knowledge just doesn't come from doing things in labs and studies. I think that everyone, I mean, it's definitely evidence-based. Say evidence-based for sure. I don't want to argue with anyone's definition of science. But, like one thing that I think everybody knows is that if you get a UTI, you drink cranberry juice and it helps. And we know that because we've been doing it for 500 years and it helps. And we wouldn't do it for that long if it didn't work. And so if we have something that we've been doing for 5,000 years, we are still doing it because it has worked for 5,000 years. Like, we are way too smart as human beings to continue doing something for that long that doesn't work. There's too much evidence that it does. And there are random, double-blind, controlled placebo studies done in India on Ayurveda all the time. We just don't read about them or hear about them here.
And yeah, studies on herbs and such, but I think it's hard to study the system in the same way that we study modern medicine, because Ayurveda is not population-based medicine. Again, I feel like I'm a broken record this episode, but it so values who the individual is. And when you are doing individualized healthcare, it's really hard to standardize and to test. And that doesn't mean that there's not things that could use more research, because I think we're both advocates of doing more research and understanding these things a lot better. Mm-hmm. But in the way that Ayurveda is practiced, it's really hard to standardize and do these double-blind placebo-backed trials, because everybody's so individualized that if two people come with migraines, we're not giving them the same treatment. We're looking at the individual and working with them, not necessarily the symptom or the disease. But I think the other really interesting piece of Ayurveda is it doesn't translate over to our modern view of the body or science or how we view the organs. Because of that, it could be seen as archaic or lacking or different, but it's just in a completely different metaphor than our current understanding. And I think a lot of things in modern science have validated what we've known for thousands of years in Ayurveda. But like when we talk about the terms, like if I say you're deficient in your Anavaha Shrotas, like that doesn't necessarily mean there's a modern translation or counterpart. Now there actually might be for that one, but it's a different system with different words and different lenses. And when you stick within that system, it makes sense and it helps people get better. But if you try to convert it over to our modern view of the body, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. Your Mom Sadatu is deficient. You have leaky gut.
Right. Dude, it's so funny because I talk to clients and I'm like, I write my notes kind of like in Ayurvedic language. So as I'm like actually talking to them in my head, like, how do I convert this into something you're gonna understand? And it's always a little bit of a challenge. So it's a bit of like educating and explaining and then like trying to make it accessible, and it works well. Like people understand what we're doing, but it's something to navigate for sure.
Oh, I think it's fun. And I really love working with people who are like high pitta, who have pitta personalities, because they really want to understand. They're more likely to do the things and get the results if they understand why. And so they will ask for explanations, and it's always fun to try to find a way to explain to translate it into modern terms what is going on here. And yeah, I love that.
Awesome.
I think it's just like a fun part of what we do.
Absolutely. I hope that everybody has some new information on Ayurveda and what it is. And I'm curious, so please feel free to reach out what you learn about Ayurveda, and did this challenge any of the views that you had on the topic? And if so, tell us. We'd love to hear about it. And we'd love to hear if there's any other myths about Ayurveda that you think need busting or clarification.
I just want to clarify one thing. You only ever want Apanavayu moving downward. I'm not going to say anything else about it. Just if you hear anybody saying that Apanavayu moving any direction other than downward is good,
Run.
yeah, question everything they say.
I want to give them context, but I don't think it's appropriate.
We could go there another time. I think we've run out of time, but that was the inspiration for this episode. And I'm sure there'll be more. More will be said about Ayurveda in the future. I think this was a fun episode to do, and it's good to dig into this topic that's so near and dear to my heart. And thank you for doing this with me, Lila, and thank you to everyone for listening. And I would like to know, to anybody who reaches out, did this make Ayurveda more or less accessible to you? Because that's really my hope, is that we can make it more accessible, to just begin to incorporate a little bit here and there.
Yes,
Without
I
all the
love it.
rigidity, without worrying about breaking the rules, without worrying about the Ayurveda police coming to get you.
I love that. And I look forward to hearing from you guys on that. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Herbalism Uncensored. We're genuinely humbled by the love and support you've shown us. If you've been enjoying the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review if you feel called, and don't hesitate to reach out. Whether it's with a question, a success story, or a topic you'd love us to explore in a future episode. And remember, both Alicia and Lila, that's me, run virtual clinics. We'd love for you to check out what we're up to. You can find Alicia's practice Holistically Correct at holisticallycorrect.com, and you can learn more about my work at the Virtual Natural Healing Clinic by visiting tvnhc.com. Until next time, be well, stay grounded, and keep healing.